Welcome to my 247th video on my work with OO gauge. In this video I will be revisiting the Hornby Dublo Duchess model with a horseshoe magnet, which I picked up at the recent Woodstock train show. I had previously given this model a full service, including remagnetizing the horseshoe magnet in the specific way recommended by Ronald Dodds for magnets of this type. I also renamed this, my fifth Duchess, to the Duchess of Abercorn, using etched plates from Fox transfers. Now, despite all my servicing and remagnetizing efforts, the model still seemed to require an undue amount of power to run at all, and I felt that this was likely down to the weak horseshoe magnet. So in this video, pursuant to suggestions from Ronald Dodds and others online, I'll be trying to improve the performance of this model by using small rare earth magnets to strengthen the magnetic field. This turned out to be quite a bit trickier than the videos I'd previously seen led me to believe, although they were working with N2 locos with horseshoe magnets and the Duchess is a bit different. Here is the model as it was at the end of my previous video, serviced, remagnetized and renamed, but barely running. On my GaugeMaster controller it required at least 90% power to run at all and tended to overheat the controller, so I switched to running it on the MRC Sound and Power controller, which I have as an alternate for my 3-rail tabletop. I'm running the MRC controller in HO gauge mode. It also has a G gauge mode, but even in the HO gauge mode, the MRC is capable of providing a lot more power than the GaugeMaster. Before I made any changes to the model, I wanted to see how much power it was really using. So I looked to a multimeter. Actually, this wasn't the first meter I looked at. Initially, I assumed that I would use my newest multimeter, a Sperry DM6250, which I have generally found very handy with auto-ranging and an auto-off feature. But when I got the DM6250 out for this project, I realized that it didn't have a function for measuring current amperage. I guess I've never really wanted to do that since I started using the Sperry. So I got out the meter seen here, an older one from Canadian Tire in their House Mastercraft brand. This one certainly does measure current. To measure current, the meter must be connected into the circuit in series, so I disconnected the cable from the MRC controller from one side of the Dublo power track, the crocodile clip with the red sleeve, connected that cable to one probe of the multimeter, and then connected the other probe of the multimeter to the Dublo power track via the white cable and crocodile clip. To measure substantial current, the red probe of the multimeter must be connected to the special 10 amp socket as seen at left here. For all other measuring, that probe would be connected to the socket on the right. With the probes correctly connected up and the control dial of the multimeter rotated until the yellow arrow pointed to the 10 amp mark, I was ready to measure current. So now let's see my attempts to measure the current use with this setup. Okay, so I've still got my latest Duchess with a horseshoe magnet railed up. It's actually railed up with a couple of coaches, not a light engine. It's got a couple of relatively modern, well, they're mainlines, so they're not that modern, but you know, they're not Dublo coaches, they're lightweight plastic coaches with fairly free-running bogies behind him. And I've now got the multimeter hooked up in series. I've got a separate camera on the multimeter there, so I'm going to try and run him and show you how much power he's using. Since I've already tested this, I know it's a distressingly large amount, but we'll show some comparisons here. I'm running him on the MRC controller because it's capable of providing more power than the GaugeMaster. Okay, so that's about 50% power on the MRC, and he's drawing about an amp, which is really much too much. But, you know, that's the way it is. He draws about an amp, which is why he can barely run on the GaugeMaster controller, because he's really pulling pretty much the maximum power it should supply. Oh, okay. Okay, finally, hopefully I've got both cameras turned on. First I shot the handheld camera without the camera for the multimeter turned on. Not doing very well today. Then I had the multimeter camera turned on, but not my handheld camera. Anyway, so there is the Duchess with the horseshoe magnet on the track. Now let's see if we can try and start it again using the MRC controller, which I have to bend down to the floor to do. Of course it's not going because it's stuck on a point now. Well, oh, now it's... Oh, really, we are not getting anywhere, are we? Well, I have to admit I'm really struggling to make this process work. Between one camera not turned on and the other camera not turned on, or the coaches derailing. I've given up on the coaches now. I'm just going to run the Duchess with the horseshoe magnet light engine with the on the MRC controller with the ammeter. Oh, and he's still not blithering going. Oh, for goodness sake. What the heck is the problem? No. I mean, one thing is he'd probably like a bit more power than that, but yeah, he's slightly under 50%. Let me just nudge him up a bit. Slightly over 50%. The basic upshot is essentially that he's drawing the best part of an amp. Well, now without the coaches and whatever, he's drawing maybe about... He was drawing about an amp with the coaches. And he's drawing a little under 0.900 milliamps. And it bounces around a bit as different things happen, but he's drawing 800 and some milliamp, 850 milliamps, whatever, something like that. Anywhere between, whoops, trying to reach the controller, anywhere between sort of 800 and 900 milliamps he's joining. Now, that's an N2. Which I would consider a fairly good running Dublo engine comparatively. I'm just going to change the points to run the N2. Oh, if I could even reach that point with the camera in the way, but yeah. Oh dear. So I just changed the points, so we're now not running the horseshoe Duchess, we're running the N2 if I can. Whoops, he's going a bit fast. That's only at about 35%. So lower voltage, that reduces it. Oh, maybe I reduced it a bit too much. No, about 35% he seems to like on that MRC controller. And he's drawing about 600 milliamps or a bit more. Okay, let's see if I can stop him. It's hard to do because I've got to get down to the ground to do it. Oh, actually, you know what I'm actually going to bring him round to the front and take him off for a minute, because then I want to run a modern, well, comparatively modern engine. This is most people, I guess, wouldn't call this modern. I call it modern because I call basically anything pretty much that's after the Hornby Dublo and separate triangle modern. This is a Hornby. It's a Ginty built on a Hornby. If I can move it. No, we don't want you to go there. Oh, I'm getting the 8F pulling out there as well. I guess I've got two engines in there. Oh dear. Let's try this if we can. Oh, for goodness sake, because he's stuck on the point because He's fitted with a marking skate and he doesn't get over the points very well, given a little bit more power. Now his actual power setting there is higher than the N2. That's at about 45. I was running the N2 at about 35, but the amperage he's drawing is less. Now it's 350 milliamps. But this is an EXO4 motor. Oh, for goodness sake. He's getting stuck on points and double crossings and things, but because he's a conversion and he doesn't have the greatest centre rail pickup. But you know, that's the point. He's drawing about, on average, around about 350 milliamps. So, what? 850 milliamps for the Horseshoe. Stop them now. 850 milliamps for the Horseshoe. 650 milliamps for the N2. And 350 milliamps for the modern EXO4 motor Ginty. So, this model was using about a full amp when pulling 2 coaches and averaging something like 850 milliamps light engine. Now, Ronald Dodds has suggested that the performance of old Dublo models with horseshoe magnets can be improved by placing small, modern, powerful rare earth magnets strategically to strengthen the magnetic field of the motor. However, I've only seen him, or anyone else for that matter, doing this on N2 locos where there is a bit more room around the motor. As you may see here, there's not much space between the horseshoe magnet and the loco body of the Duchess when everything is assembled. The chassis is removed from the body by undoing the nut on the screw up front and then lifting the front of the chassis out of the body. Slits in the back of the chassis fit onto a ledge at the back of the body, so the front must be lifted away first, as seen here. Then the chassis can be pulled forward, unhooking its slit from the body at the back. You can see again how little space there is around the magnet. I had a number of rare earth magnets on hand. What I ended up using was the ones on top here, fairly thick with small diameter. I tried sticking rare earth magnets to the sides of the horseshoe magnet beside the armature, where they would have the best effect. I put one on each side. Of course, it wouldn't be possible to put the body on with them positioned like this. I tried sliding them down to the ends of the horseshoe magnet, which is what Ronald Dodds did on his N2. I was able to put the body on like that, and it appeared that the armature would still turn freely. I put the rear pony truck and drawbar back onto the model. Unfortunately, when I tried the model on the tracks like this, it wouldn't run at all. I think the magnets were perhaps moving in and fouling the armature. So I tried a different approach, putting 2 small magnets on either side on the straight sections of the horseshoe magnet where there was space between the magnet and the body. I put the pony truck and the drawbar back on with that arrangement. It's almost impossible to refit the chassis into the body unless the pony truck is removed. The model did actually run on the tracks like that, but not very helpfully. Well, I've got the thing running now, but it doesn't seem to have achieved anything. I mean, if anything, it's using more power now than before I put those extra rare earth magnets on, so it's using, it's gone right up to an amp there and down 90. Basically it's using more power than before, which makes absolutely no sense to me, but it seems to be. What can I tell you? So I don't know what to tell you. That does not seem to have succeeded at all. Here's the chassis with the magnets fitted like that being tested with a compass. As you can see, the magnetic field doesn't really go across the armature properly. The rare earth magnets are so strong that now the field is displaced completely. I believe this is why they didn't help in this position. Certainly they didn't. I next considered this as a placement for the small magnets on top of the horseshoe magnet directly beside the armature. I figured that this should create a stronger magnetic field where it was wanted. it was possible to fit the body on with the magnets positioned like that. However, even with this arrangement, the loco didn't work on the tracks at first. I took the model back to the bench and played around with running it with my bench power supply, experimenting with the positioning of the rare earth magnets. At this point I had something of a breakthrough. I had been assuming that the rare earth magnets would automatically attach to the horseshoe magnet in the correct polarity orientation. After all, generally when you attach two magnets they will only attach the correct way, with North Pole connected to South Pole. If you try to connect North Pole to North Pole, the two magnets will repel each other. But that principle didn't work here. I was able to attach the rare earth magnets to the horseshoe magnet either one way round or the other. The rare earth magnets were so strong that they would attach to the horseshoe magnet even if the north of the rare earth was presented to the north side of the horseshoe. So it was critical that I made sure that I was attaching the rare earth magnets to the horseshoe in such a way as to strengthen the natural field of the horseshoe rather than weakening it. I was able to see this quite clearly on the bench. If I presented a rare earth magnet to the horseshoe the wrong way round whilst the motor was running, it would still attach, but the motor would slow down or stop. On the other hand, if I presented a rare earth magnet to the horseshoe the correct way round whilst the motor was running, the motor would markedly increase in speed. With that discovery made, I was able to fit rare earth magnets to the top of the horseshoe magnet in the correct way, and finally get the model to actually perform better. Alright, let me see if I can now manage to video this right. I think after a lot of struggling, well, we'll see, I finally managed to persuade the thing to actually run with the extra magnets on, with the body on. Oh, sorry, clocks are still chiming. Okay, let's give it some power. Okay, so now that's only 40% power on the MRC, so it's less voltage, and it's also only drawing less than 500 milliamps now. Actually, you say average of about 450 milliamps. So finally, the magnets are on the top of the horseshoe beside the armature now. And that actually seems to have worked finally. Now that I've managed to get the magnets correctly positioned so that the thing will still run, and they're actually contributing magnetism the right way. Yes, he's running, and he's going up to 55 at times, he's going up and down, but he's certainly running a lot lower than he was, because he was pretty much a 4 amp before. So I would say, finally, after a good deal of struggling, I had great trouble figuring out how to position those magnets and still get the engine to run with the body on. But I would say, finally, this exercise has succeeded. Now I've got to stop the engine, which of course is awkward to do, because I've got to go down. That's the best I can do. So there you go. The Horseshoe Duchess, with a couple of rare earth magnets, actually finally managed to be put somewhere where they help and make it run at a lower current. Okay, just a little addendum on this horseshoe magnet Duchess. I've now got the Gauge Master controller connected back up. That is to say, I've turned it on and I've taken away the ammeter and the other controller. I've not connected the ammeter up now, the amp meter, because those nuts on that connection track are such a pain to work with. I just don't want to undo them, and I have to connect the ammeter in sequence with this. But okay, let me give it some power on the Gauge Master controller. Okay, so now that's 60% power. Famous nice words. See there, 60% power on the Gauge Master controller, and it's not running too badly at all. Basically, to get it to run this well before I added the rare earth magnets, took about 90% power on the Gauge Master controller. So clearly, it definitely has helped the running a considerable amount. Although it was difficult to do, it was a struggle to get those magnets positioned so they would actually work, but now we have got them working. It's working quite well.